Hey gunfighters, get ready for another installment of Gunfighter Life. Recently did an episode on lessons learned from law enforcement in gunfighting, and I came down kind of hard. It was kind of a negative episode, but I wanted to really throw in some positive gleanings from military and law enforcement that I learned over the years, and how you can apply that to yourself in your own life as a gunfighter, as a prepared, well-regulated, well-armed citizen. With that, seems germane that I would put in a bio. I'm going to put in a longer one. I've been going really short on the bios, but I'm going to put in a longer one to establish some street cred as to experiences I've had in military and law enforcement. And it's still pretty short. There's a lot of stuff not on there, but you'll get the idea of why you should listen to this episode or listen to me at all. Not because I have a microphone and not because I have a podcast. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Enough about me, guys. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Let's get into today's topic. All right, some lessons learned, some important ones. The last part one, I didn't intend it to be a part one, but the last one was a lot about gear and stuff like that and different guns. Today's going to be a lot deeper and more important lessons, I think. Now, I make no apologies that this is a Christian First podcast. I am a Christian first and foremost. This lesson is going to tie in something I learned from the military, but it's going to have a religious aspect. If you don't like it, too bad. There is a certain subset I learned in the military of people that just want to kill you, especially if you're a Christian. Now, it says in the Bible, if you're a Christian, sometimes that's self-persecution, like somebody saying something like, oh, you're a smart guy. Surely you believe in evolution. Surely you can't believe that the Bible is literal and God made man in His very own image and His own likeness from jump. No, I don't believe in evolution. I think that's garbage, so-called pseudoscience. It might be soft persecution like that. It might literally be some radical Islam, Muslim jihadist that wants to cut your head off because you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Those people exist, and you had better remember that. That's a lesson I learned pretty black and white going to war twice for this country in the Middle East, fighting Muslims that wanted to kill Christians. Now, to be fair, we invaded their country. But plenty of Muslims around the world that kill Christians all the time, and you had better remember that that's a thing. You had better remember to be on guard, watch, and be ready. There is a certain subset of people in the world that just want to kill you for who you are. That's a lesson I learned in the military. How about a lesson from law enforcement? And this is learning a fallacy. That most people think the way that you do, that most people are rational, sane people that think logically about things. And I've seen this tied into many misconceptions and myth in gunfighting. Like, oh, all you got to do is rack a shotgun and the person's going to defecate and jump out a window. If they're a rational person that's in the wrong house, maybe. But if you're a cop for any length of time, you've likely dealt with somebody on so many drugs, sadly, so strung out, they have no idea what's going on. You could shove that barrel in their mouth and they wouldn't know what's going on. And some of those people are very, very violent. Some people are mentally ill, just plainly. Some people are mentally ill and use mind-altering drugs. Some people have used mind-altering drugs so long it gives them a mental illness and they still use drugs. But all of these people are dangerous, and don't make the mistake of thinking that they think like you or me, and that they're rational and they're going to make a rational decision, and that if you give them an ultimatum, they're going to make a logical choice. You have to realize, take it from somebody who's been there, that that's not always the case. People are not always rational, and I'm not just talking about emotionally. People literally do not think correctly. That might be the person you're dealing with. The person that will not stop unless you stop them. The person you can't rationalize with. That's a lesson from law enforcement. Another lesson from law enforcement: evil exists. Evil exists. Evil is part of this world. How else would you describe an adult family member that would molest a minor in their own family? How else would you describe a man that abuses a woman physically and mentally for entertainment, because they get some kind of sick, twisted pleasure out of it? If you wouldn't call that evil, I think you need to have a deep spiritual look at your beliefs, because there's real evil in this world that exists. A lot of people may not run into it, so they may act like it doesn't exist, but if you confront it, if you actually see it in front of you, it's hard to deny that it's a real thing, that it really exists. And you had better, again, be ready. Some people are or have given themselves up to evil. That is a real thing. Another lesson you get is mostly from law enforcement. Not that you couldn't get it from military, but reading people. And I did a whole episode on pre-attack indicators for Patreon, for patrons, on pre-attack indicators. And I'm not going to rehash all of that. That was most of those I'm just going to leave just for the patrons. If you want that, then become a patron. I did a whole episode on different pre-attack indicators. But as a cop, you recognize pretty quick when you're about to get punched in the face, or somebody's going to try and punch you in the face, and somebody's about to throw down. Now, I've learned that firsthand, and not just from that. I kind of grew up as a scrapper in kind of that redneck culture. Like, if somebody said something bad about something that I didn't like, they were getting punched in the mouth. That's just how it was. And I wasn't a Christian then. I became a Christian later in life. It was just kind of part of the culture. I have punched a lot of people in the face. Some deserved it, and I'll be honest, many didn't. But I kind of grew up in that culture, and a culture of fighting. But I think, sadly, well, there's a time for violence. But I think a lot of people grow up today, a lot of young men, and they never get in a fight. Not even for sport. Not even boxing, wrestling, MMA. They don't do any of that. They may be a grown man and have never gotten punched in the face. They may have never spit out some teeth. They may have never, had their nose smashed in. They have never been knocked out. But all the things leading up to that, left of that event, if you've been in enough of those situations, you kind of see some commonality there. That's a big lesson you can learn. Now, if somebody's really dangerous, and this is maybe a lesson you can apply, if you're totally relaxed and like, hey man, I just want to bam, and you just crank somebody because you know it's time and you don't want to telegraph that you're going to do it. That's a dangerous man. But most people aren't like that. Most people get all worked up. You see them pacing back and forth, see them clenching their fists. You see that neck vein popping out. And those are just a few I did. Again, I did a whole episode on pre-attack indicators. But you get to know when somebody wants to be violent. They usually work themselves up to it. Usually not cool, calculated, and they know they're going to use violence, but they're trying to keep it on the down low. Most people, because they lose control. And you should learn those pre-attack indicators. If you don't want to learn it firsthand by getting punched in the face, then maybe find a roundabout way that probably won't be as good, but to learn those pre-attack indicators. But people usually telegraph when they're going to be violent. Now, you might show up in a situation and somebody's already being violent and you have to do something about it. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about like where a situation is escalating and you know somebody's about to get violent, or you have a pretty good indication that somebody's about to get violent. Use that to prepare. Use that to get ready. That's a lesson I learned. And I learned it throughout life, but a lot in law enforcement. I know today the law enforcement is supposed to be kinder and gentler, but I grew up, kind of older school LAPD, where if somebody wanted to throw down, you had better throw down. You weren't just representing yourself, you were representing the whole police department. Right or wrong, that was the mentality that like that thin blue line between you and chaos, you had better keep them in check and realize that they can't take advantage of somebody with a badge. You were willing to be violent if they were willing to be violent. A lot of times that meant throwing down. Again, whether that's good or bad, I'm not here to talk about whether that was good or bad. But I'm here to tell you that you learned lessons about being violent and when somebody's about to be violent. Another lesson, building on that wasn't on the agenda, but it made me think of it, and it's an important one. Even if you have a gun, many fights, not a tiny fraction, many fights end up on the ground, whether you have a gun or not. Just because you're a civilian and you're armed, don't think that, I have a gun, I don't need to know how to fight. If somebody hauls off and punches you in the face, and you shoot them, you're probably not justified. You may be, depending on way many other circumstances, but probably not. If, you're at a gas station late at night where all kinds of good things happen all the time, right? Unicorns and teddy bears at gas stations, at 7-Elevens late at night. Somebody walks up to you, hey man, don't worry about it, I just want to see if you have any money or something like that, and he keeps walking up to you, you're going to pull your gun and point it at him? Probably not. And he's probably going to get close enough that if he wants to and he knows what he's doing, he can grab you and throw you on the ground. Whether you have a gun or not, you can't just shoot somebody. Badge or no badge. A lot of fights end up on the ground. So even if you have a gun, you had better be acquainted with ground fighting. If you want to actually do this for real, if you actually want to be prepared instead of act like you're prepared, you actually want to have a gun to increase your chances of survival, not just #me too, I have a gun, look at me. If you don't just think of it as a tactical teddy bear too, you hold it and it makes you feel good. That's not how guns work. You have to be well trained, well regulated. And again, a lot of fights, gun or no gun, end up on the ground. So grappling, CQB, wrestling, you should probably be acquainted with that too and tie the firearm into it. Firearms retention, fighting with one hand, grabbing your gun with the other, things like that. Now that's a little bit higher level. If you can't, work on being able to get good, quick hits, varying distances with your pistol to begin with, and then maybe add the CQB stuff on, get some professional instructions and professional training. But again, a lot of fights end up on the ground, whether you have a gun or not. So you had better be acquainted with ground fighting if you actually want to be effective and not just carry a gun as a tactical teddy bear to feel good. It often cracks me up when I see these things on whatever social media sites or whatever. They show these super fast tactical gun takeaways. And they always show the person getting the gun taken away just holding the gun out there with one hand with the gun at full extension. That's not how you hold a gun for CQB. Why would you hold your gun out where you have little to no leverage? That's not what you do. And you would know that if you train CQB type stuff. Somebody's just holding a gun out with one hand out there so somebody can take the gun away. They're doing that for show. That's a look at me, get a bunch of clicks type of thing. That's not how you actually fight CQB. You should learn to shoot from retention with a gun hugged up close to your body. You should learn weapon retention techniques. You should learn all that stuff because that's real world, real life stuff sometimes. That's a lesson you can take from that. I've talked about this before, but it's been a while. But this is sadly a big one. And I'll be honest, when I was a cop, I heard it so much I kind of got jaded to it. But it's this: it'll never happen to me fallacy. Oh, I never thought it would happen to me. You know, you'd show up on some call, just for an example, and BFMV, burglary from motor vehicle. Somebody smashed somebody's window and stole whatever was in their vehicle. And the person would be like, I never thought it would happen to me. Well, did you know that, vehicles have been broken into in your neighborhood? Well, yeah, but I never thought it would happen to me. Because they just didn't think it was going to happen to them. It can happen to you. I often use this. People are like, well, people that are anti-gun or don't know why you would carry a gun are like, well, I've never needed a gun. Well, how many times can you get murdered? Everybody that's ever been murdered never got murdered before that. Right? You only get murdered once, and you don't know what day that's going to be probably because you'd avoid it. The fact that it hasn't happened to you yet is kind of ridiculous, as to say why you would never need it. Right? The fact that you've never been murdered yet. It's like, well, I've never been murdered, so obviously I don't need to protect myself from being murdered because I've never been murdered. Here I am, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. I've never been murdered, so obviously I'm not going to be murdered. I mean, every single day of my life, I've never been murdered. Or fill in the crime blank. Right? That I never thought it would happen to me fallacy. Bad things happen to good and bad people all the time. Watch and be ready. Be prepared. Don't fall into that I never thought it would happen to me fallacy, because I heard it so much, honestly, I got jaded to it. I was mostly dealing with people that called that something bad happened to them. And up until that point, a lot of them didn't think it was going to happen to them for whatever reason. Don't fall into that trap. Don't fall into that fallacy. Now, don't live your life in fear either. That's part of watching and being ready and being prepared. So you don't need to worry about it. So you don't need to be in fear because you're as prepared as you're going to be. Some things you just can't be prepared for. You could be the tacticalist, backflipping, John Wick times 10 to the 8th power shooter, and you could get T-boned by an 18-wheeler. It's kind of a moot point. None of us are invincible, but you can be prepared. You can be ready. And not because you're a fearful person, but because you know that bad things happen to all kinds of people, and you want to be ready and prepared as reasonably as you can. That's a lifestyle. That's not a check a box. It's not like, oh, I got a Ruger LCP in my pocket and I got a pocket knife. I'm good now. It's a lifestyle. You should always be searching. I've been EDCing everyday carrying for years and years, and today I'm trying something new. Out of a bunch of random stuff in my pocket that I carry, I made a little organized Altoids tin that I keep in my pocket. We'll see how that works out. It just demonstrates it's a lifestyle. It's not something bad happened or something bad happened to somebody that I know, so I'm going to run out and buy a gun and put it under my pillow and now I'm okay. It's not how that works. Again, it's not a tactical teddy bear. Another one that's important skill, de-escalation. Now, I'll be honest, when I was a younger, more hot-headed Marine and going into my law enforcement career, I wasn't much on de-escalation. I was kind of like, you want to throw down, let's throw down. As I got a little bit older and wiser, again, this predates my actual conversion to Christ, but even then, you start to realize you get into enough fights, even if you win the fight, you usually get hurt. You punch somebody enough, you're going to hurt your hand. Even if you are technically the winner in a fight, usually get hurt in one way or another. Especially being a cop, a lot of people you deal with, hepatitis C, HIV, scabies, MRSA, which I caught once. Right? So if I got to throw down with somebody, I don't know what they got. Even if I win, is it worth potentially getting hep C or HIV or MRSA? Again, which I got. It's like a flesh-eating bacteria, which was a crazy... I don't want to be the guy that's like, let me tell you all these stories about back in the day when I was a cop and how cool I was. But I'll tell you, I got MRSA. You talk about some nasty stuff. Anyway, MRSA's nasty. Praise God I didn't get anything long-term like hepatitis, which cops get. HIV. Could you imagine like fighting somebody? Oh yeah, I won, and then you end up with HIV. Like that's not cool. Or some fights can't be avoided, and violence is not bad in and of itself. But if you can de-escalate, try and de-escalate. And again, I'm not going to pretend that all the fights I ever got into, with or without a badge, were justified. Pride, ego, machismo, these are not good reasons to get into a fight. And I thought when I was younger that they were, but they're not. There are, and I'll still throw down. I'll still punch somebody in the face if I have to. But not so I don't look a fool. That's real confidence. No, I'm confident in who I am, and I'm confident in the kind of man that I am. And I don't need to punch somebody or throw down with somebody over bravado or pride. Again, and I'm not opposed to violence. I'll still hit somebody if that's what's called for. But de-escalation is an important skill. So you should probably learn that one. That's a good lesson to learn. I think that's a good place to wrap up. These are some pretty deep lessons, a lot deeper than the part one of this, lessons learned military and law enforcement. Hope you learned something from it. I think I've heard it said, and it might not be an exact quote, and I don't even know who said it, but a smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. A fool never learns. So learn from a lot of mistakes that I've made. Hopefully this episode was a blessing to you. Don't forget to share it, like, subscribe, leave a review, hit some stars, whatever you think. I appreciate you guys, appreciate you listening. With that, the tactical tip of the day. There's these things called Ranger bands. You can buy them. They're basically a big, thick, flammable rubber band. I like to put them on my EDC knives, put them in different places around my kit. I often spend time, if you don't know, I live as a neo-nomad. Oftentimes I'll live semi-off-grid, completely off-grid. I'll be out in the wilderness. They're good for a lot of things. They're good for starting fire as well. Well, you can make your own way cheaper if you just go to whatever big box store, wherever you get your sporting good stuff, and buy a bike inner tube. You can cut up a bike inner tube and make a ton of those way cheaper. And you can make them as thick and as big as you want. And again, Ranger bands. You can buy them, but you can make your own. And making your own, it's a lot cheaper, and you can get really thick. Also, a tactical tip inside a tactical tip. Matryoshka tactical tip, if you will. A Russian nesting doll of tactical tips. You take those Ranger bands, if you carry a fixed blade EDC knife, as I often do, you can put it around the sheath, and you can put extra survival stuff inside that big piece of inner tube. Ferrocerium rod, maybe a surgical scalpel, a little button compass. Get crazy. Why not? Anyway, that's your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. If a man is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. That's straight up Torah, out of God's law. If a man is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.